Go live. Why not go live, ladies and gentlemen? Why not go live indeed? And we are live. Welcome to Thurber night. Oh my goodness, ladies and gentlemen, it has been a crazy day here. It has been a crazy day here in Bellows Falls, Vermont. Let's see well, first off, an utterly shocking news amongst Bellows delusions is our friend Josh Mosier, 45 years old, unexpectedly had a heart attack yesterday and moved on to his next great adventure, which is terrible. He was a lovely, lovely guy. And he loved movies. He worked part-time at the Bellows Falls Opera House. And so we are honoring him with doing a series of his favorite movies. We're starting out with Prince's Purple Rain, ladies and gentlemen, coming up in April. But we did a fundraiser for Josh, and he's so loved in the community, ladies and gentlemen. It's raised $2,800 in less than a day, and I set a goal of $600, so it's doing very, very well. Charbonneau is home and is glad to be in front of the camera. Charbonneau has discovered the camera, ladies and gentlemen, or he's discovered the monitor, the TV monitor, and he really likes watching television with me. And when we're on television, it makes him very happy too. Anyway, so we're honoring Josh. That took up a lot more of the day than I thought it would. And then I am getting the Ray Masuko concert series at the Bellows Falls Opera House all ready to go. We've got the 4 dates set. Now we've got to build all the stuff that goes into the website, and I got all that stuff done today. But I have been tearing around, and meanwhile, the great Betty Sue was up for the last week, which was a lovely, lovely thing. And she controls, she is the goddess of Amtrak. I have been on Amtrak trains that have been 19 hours late. I've been on Amtrak trains that have been annulled, leaving me stranded in various strange parts of America. The great Betty Sue came up on the train last week. Her train from Austin, Texas to Springfield, Massachusetts. Her train from Austin, Texas to Chicago was on time. Her train from Chicago to Springfield, Massachusetts was on time. Then the next day, she went from Greenfield, Massachusetts, down to New York to play a show. That train was on time. Then she came back on the Vermonter from New York to Bellows Falls. That was on time. 2 days ago, she left from Springfield, Mass. On the Lakeshore Limited, which is colloquially known as the Late for Shore Limited. She got in 40 minutes early, I think it was, to Chicago. Then, yesterday afternoon, she got on the mighty Texas Eagle. The mighty Texas Eagle, ladies and gentlemen. Last time 2 times ago when I rode the Texas Eagle, the engine broke down in Joliet, and we sat in Joliet for 7 hours while I figured out whether to get us a new engine. They did. They got us a new engine. But her train got up to 40 minutes or maybe an hour late around Texarkana. And she was like, oh, my superpowers are waning. But then she arrived 1 hour early into Fort Worth and then on time into Austin. Go figure, ladies and gentlemen. Well, you know why it is? Terry Hudson and I discovered a few years ago that the Betty Sue Rocks the House t-shirt, well, Terry discovered it, and I've helped publicize it. Terry discovered that the Betty Sue Rocks the House t-shirt if it is worn while you're on Amtrak, it prevents your train from being late. Unless, of course, the powers are just too great and the garment does not have the ability to overcome what it is having to deal with. Well, it turns out Betty Sue herself is the garment. So if you want to travel by Amtrak, I highly recommend that you travel with Betty Sue. Anyway, yes, as Terry Hudson says, it has powers. It has superpowers. Anyway, let's see. I'm going to look at the comments for a moment. Kate Cullers says she borrowed a Thurber book to read along. Just love these stories. Now your family loved them. Yes, we did. And we still do. Terry's here. Facebook user, who's usually Martha Rowley, is here. My very tall cousin is here. Lori LaRue is here. Charbonneau is here and ready to walk on the keyboard again. Yes, Facebook user, Martha, I will tell you secretly what the shows are, because not all the contracts have been double signed, returned yet, but everything is set. It's a pretty good lineup too. And my very, very tall cousin says that they love BS. Of course, we all love BS. And Lori LaRue says the shirt, she happens to be wearing it right now, but you're not on a train, are you, Lori LaRue? Anyway, it is a joy to be here. It's a joy to have you here. We are here tonight honoring our friend Josh. He was a good human being. He disliked a certain orange-hued politician even more than I do. He will be missed. He will be missed. Life is fragile, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, but speaking of very, very, very good news, I do need to, I'm sure most of the people who watch this are aware of what happened with Miles the cat last week. That's it. One door opens, another door closes. You can't keep track of what's going on. Anyway, Miles the cat, missing since January 22nd. I told the story of Charbonneau running in through the door, a little freaked out, and the two little boys looking under the deck of my house. And I went out and asked them what the hell they were up to, and they said, "We're looking for Miles." Oh, is that cat yours? We're looking for Miles. Miles has been missing 3 days. He's my best friend's cat. And we all got weepy because we didn't know where Miles was. Well, last week across the river, 4 miles away, 4 miles across the river, this woman saw a very, very skinny black kitty. And she called her friend, who she calls the cat whisperer. And the cat whisperer came over, and she's a lady truck driver, ladies and gentlemen, a heavily tattooed lady truck driver. She came over to that woman's house, and she saw the skinny cat. And the skinny cat came up to her and mewed piteously. And she went and got some dry food, and she got some wet food. And that cat started scarfing it down, and she said it looked like it was thanking her. One cat to hear just bit the head of the other cat, but that's cats. Anyway, it was thanking her as it was eating that food, and then she grabbed the cat and she called the cops, and the cops came and they took that cat over to the vet, and the vet checked to see if it was chipped, and it was chipped, and it was Miles. Miles had been missing since January 22nd until February 9th, I think, and is home and with his people and with his best friend, Walter the dog. And I bet he's not getting to go outside for a good long time. Anyway, welcome to Thurber night. Now, we're going slightly out of order here. The next story in My Life in Hard Times is a sequence of servants, and I do not read that anymore because it is somewhat racist, and it is extremely classist, and it is the one story in my life in hard times that I think should be retired because times change. Doesn't mean James Thurber wasn't funny. Now, the next chapter would be The Dog That Bit People, but because next week we're going to honor the return of Miles by raising money for the Windham County Humane Society or for some humane society or something humane. I'm skipping that, and instead we're reading University Days. Then next week we're going back one chapter and read The Dog That Bit People. You want to come up, Sharps? Yes, he does. Yes, he does. Hi, Sharps. This is exactly what Miles looked like. That's why the little boys thought that Charbonneau was Miles. Anyway, come on, bud. Let's get going. I've blathered enough. But I see there are at least 17 of us who could give one good goddamn about the Super Bowl. Anyway, University Days by James Thurber. I passed all the other courses that I took at my university, but I could never pass botany. That was because all botany students had to spend several hours a week in a laboratory looking through a microscope at plant cells, and I could never see through a microscope. I never once saw a cell through the microscope. This used to enrage my instructor. He would wander around the laboratory, pleased with the progress all of the students were making in drawing the involved, and so I am told, interesting structure of flower cells, until he came to me. I would just be standing there. I can't see anything, I would say. He would begin, patiently enough, explaining how anybody can see through a microscope. But he would always end up in a fury, claiming that I could too see through a microscope, but just pretended that I could not. It takes away from the beauty of flowers anyway, I used to tell him. We're not concerned with beauty in this course, he would say. We're concerned solely with what I may call the mechanics of flowers. Well, I'd say, I can't see anything. Try it just once again, he'd say. And I would put my eye to the microscope and I would see nothing at all, except now and then a nebulous milky substance, a phenomenon of maladjustment. You are supposed to see a vivid, restless clockwork of sharply defined plant cells. I see what looks like a lot of milk, I told him. This, he claimed, was the result of my not having adjusted the microscope properly. So he would readjust it for me, or rather, for himself. And I would look again, and I would see milk. I finally took a deferred pass, as they called it, and waited a year and tried again. You had to pass one of those biological sciences, or else you couldn't graduate. The professor had come back from vacation, brown as a berry, bright-eyed and eager to explain cell structure once again to his classes. Well, he said to me cheerily when we met in the first laboratory hour of the semester, we're going to see cells this time, aren't we? Yes, sir, I said. Students to the right of me and to the left of me and in front of me were seeing the cells. What's more, they were quietly drawing pictures of them in their notebooks. Of course, I didn't see anything. We will try it, the professor said to me grimly, with every adjustment of the microscope known to man. As God is my witness, I will arrange this glass so that you see cells through it, or I will give up teaching. In 22 years of botany, he cut off abruptly, for he was beginning to quiver all over like Lionel Barrymore, and he genuinely wished to hold on to his temper. His scenes with me had taken a great deal out of him. So we tried it with every adjustment of the microscope known to man. With only one of them did I see anything but blackness or the familiar or Charbonneau, don't hit that. Don't knock that over. No. With only one of them did I see anything. Someone is planning to knock the unidentified ungulate off the table. Oh, I didn't read the names. That's what he's telling me. He's telling me I didn't read the thank you names. I'll read them at the end. All right. Sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. With only one of them did I see anything but blackness or the familiar lacteal opacity. And that time I saw to my pleasure and amazement a variegated constellation of flecks, specks, and dots. These I hastily drew. The instructor, noting my activity, came back from an adjoining desk, a smile on his lips and his eyebrows high in hope. He looked at my cell drawing. "What's that?" he demanded with a hint of squeal in his voice. "That's what I saw," I said. You didn't, he screamed, losing control of his temper instantly, and he bent over and squinted into the microscope. His head snapped up. "That's your eye," he shouted. "You've fixed the lens so that it reflects. You've drawn your eye." Another course that I did not like, but I somehow managed to pass, was economics. I went to that class straight from the botany class, which did not help me any in understanding either subject. I used to get them mixed up, but not as mixed up as another student in my economics class who came there direct from a physics laboratory. He was a tackle on the football team named Belensowitz. At that time, Ohio State University had one of the best football teams in the country, and Belensowitz was one of its outstanding stars. In order to be eligible to play, it was necessary for him to keep up in his studies, which was a very difficult matter, for while he was not dumber than an ox, he was not any smarter. Most of his professors were lenient and helped him along. None gave him more hints in answering questions or asked him simpler ones than an economics professor, a thin, timid man named Bassam. One day, when we were on the subject of transportation and distribution, it came Belensowitz's turn to answer a question. "Name one means of transportation," the professor said to him. No light came into the big tackle's eye. "Just any means of transportation," said the professor. Belensowitz sat staring at him. "That is," pursued the professor, "any medium, agency, or method of going from one place to another." Belensowitz had the look of a Belensowitz Belensowitz had the look of a man who is being led into a trap. You may choose amongst steam, horse-drawn, or electrically propelled vehicles," said the instructor. "I might suggest the one which we commonly take in making long journeys across land." There was a profound silence in which everybody stirred uneasily, including Belensowitz and Mr. Bassam. Mr. Bassam abruptly broke this silence in an amazing manner. "Choo, choo, choo," he said in a low voice, and turned instantly scarlet. He glanced appealingly around the room. All of us, of course, shared Mr. Bassam's desire that Bolensowitz should stay abreast of the class in economics. For the Illinois game, one of the hardest and most important of the season, was only a week off. Toot, 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 toot. Some student moaned, and we all looked encouragingly at Bolensowitz. Somebody else gave a fine imitation of a locomotive letting off steam. Mr. Bassam himself rounded out the little show. Ding dong, he said hopefully. Bolensowitz was staring at the floor now, trying to think, his great brow furrowed, his huge hands rubbing together, his face red. How did you come to college this year, Mr. Bolensowitz? Asked the professor. Chuffa, 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 chuffa. My father sent me, said the football player. What on? Asked Bassam. I get an allowance, said the tackle in a low, husky voice, obviously embarrassed. No, said Bassam. Name a means of transportation. What did you ride here on? Train, said Bolensowitz. Quite right, said the professor. Now, Mr. Nugent, will you tell us, if I went through anguish in botany and economics for different reasons, gymnasium work was even worse. I don't even like to think about it. They wouldn't let you play games or join in the exercises with your glasses on, and I could not see with mine off. I bumped into professors, horizontal bars, agricultural students, swinging iron rings. Not being able to see, I could take it, but I could not dish it out. Also, in order to pass gymnasium, and you had to pass it in order to graduate, you had to learn to swim if you didn't know how. I did not like the swimming pool. I did not like swimming. I did not like the swimming instructor. And after all these years, I still don't. I never swam, but I passed my gym work anyway by having another student give my gymnasium number, 978, and swim across the pool in my place. He was a quiet, amiable blonde youth, number 473, and he would have seen through a microscope for me if we could have gotten away with it, but we couldn't get away with that. Another thing I did not like about gymnasium work was that they made you strip the day you registered. It is impossible for me to be happy when I am stripped and being asked a lot of questions. Still, I did better than a lanky agricultural student who was cross-examined just before I was. They asked each student what college they were in, that is, whether arts, engineering, commerce, or agriculture. What college are you in? The instructor snapped at the youth in front of me. Ohio State University, he said promptly. It wasn't that agricultural student, but it was another, a whole lot like him, who decided to take up journalism, possibly on the ground that when farming went to hell, he could fall back on newspaper work. He did not realize, of course, that that would be very much like falling back full length on a kit of carpenter's tools. Haskins did not seem cut out for journalism, being too embarrassed to talk to anybody and unable to use a typewriter. But the editor of the college paper assigned him the cow barns, the sheep house, the horse pavilion, and the animal husbandry department generally. This was a genuinely big beat, for it took up 5 times as much ground and got 10 times as great a legislative appropriation as the College of Liberal Arts. The agricultural student did know animals, but nevertheless his stories were dull and colorlessly written. He took all afternoon on each of them on account of having to hunt for each letter on the typewriter. Once in a while, he had to ask somebody to help him out. C and L in particular. in particular were hard letters for him to find. His editor finally got pretty much annoyed at the farmer journalist because his pieces were so uninteresting. "See here, Haskins," he snapped at him one day. "Why is it we never have anything hot from you on the horse pavilion? Here we have 200 head of horses on this campus, more than any other university in the Western Conference except Purdue, and yet you never get any real lowdown on them. Now shoot over to the horse barns and dig up something lively." Haskins shambled out and came back in about an hour. He said he had something. "Well, start it off snappily," said the editor. Something people are going to read." Haskins set to work. And in a couple of hours, he brought a sheet of typewritten paper to the desk. It was a 200-word story about some disease that had broken out amongst the horses. Its opening sentence was simple, but arresting. "Who has noticed the sores on the tops of the horses in the animal husbandry building?" Ohio State was a land-grant university, and therefore 2 years of military drill was compulsory. We drilled with old Springfield rifles, and we studied the tactics of the Civil War, even though the World War was going on at the time. At 11 o'clock each morning, thousands of freshmen and sophomores used to deploy over the campus, moodily creeping up on the old chemistry building. It was a good training for the kind of warfare that we waged at Shiloh, but it had no connection with what was going on in Europe. Some people used to think that there was German money behind it, but they didn't dare say so, or they would have been thrown in jail as German spies. It was a period of muddy thought and marked, I believe, the decline of higher education in the Middle West. As a soldier, I was never any good at all. Most of the cadets were glumly indifferent soldiers, but I was no good at all. Once, General Littlefield, who was commandant of the cadet corps, popped up in front of me during regimental drill and snapped, "You are the main trouble with this university." I think that he meant that my type was the main trouble with the university, but he may have meant me individually. I was mediocre at drill, certainly. That is, until my senior year. By that time, I had drilled longer than anybody else in the entire Western Conference, having failed at military at the end of each preceding year, so that I had to do it all over again. I was the only senior who was still in uniform. The uniform, which, when new, had made me look like an interurban railway conductor, now that it had become faded and too tight, it made me look like Burt Williams with his bellboy act. This had a definitely bad effect on my morale. Even so, I had become, by sheer practice, little short of wonderful at squad maneuvers. One day, General Littlefield picked our company out of the whole regiment and tried to get it mixed up by putting it through one movement after another as fast as we could execute them. Squads right, squads left, squads on right into line, squads right about, squads left front into line, etc., etc. In about 3 minutes, 109 men were marching in one direction, and I was marching away from them at an angle of 40 degrees, all alone. "Company, halt!" shouted General Littlefield. "That man is the only one who has it right." I was made a corporal for my achievement. The next day, General Littlefield summoned me to his office. He was swatting flies when I went in. I was silent, and he was silent too for a long time. I don't think he remembered me or why he'd sent for me, but he did not want to admit it. He swatted some more flies, keeping his eyes on them narrowly before he let go with the swatter. "Button up your coat," he snapped. Looking back on it now, I can see that he meant me, though he was looking at a fly, but I just stood there. Another fly came to rest on a paper in front of the general and began rubbing its hind legs together. The general lifted the swatter cautiously. I moved restlessly, and the fly flew away. "You startled him," barked General Littlefield, looking at me severely. I said I was sorry. "That will not help the situation," snapped the general with cold military logic. I did not see what I could do except to offer to chase some more flies toward his desk, but I did not say anything. He stared out the windows at the faraway figures of co-eds crossing the campus toward the library. Finally, he told me I could go. So I went. He either didn't know which cadet I was, or else he forgot what he wanted to see me about. It may have been that he wished to apologize for having called me the main trouble with the university, or maybe he had decided to compliment me on my brilliant drilling of the day before, and then at the last minute, he decided not to. I don't know. I don't think about it much anymore. All right, ladies and gentlemen. All right, that's Thurber night for tonight. However, because I forgot to give the shout outs of the unidentified unglet, those who wish to can stick around. Now, there were 60 people who have given so far in honoring Josh Mosher. I went through the list and I pulled out the ones who might conceivably be our crowd. Now, if you are someone who donated in Josh's honor and I don't read your name, I'm sorry I got it wrong, and you just let me know and I will abase myself publicly in the future. But we have a few people to thank, and we are grateful to them. Mr. Gary Pierce, Naline Cortez, Susan McNeil, my neighbor Kelly Milliken, Karen Faisler, Sarah Ovenden, Nora Lee Hall, out there in Omaha, Nebraska, Mr. John T. Wilhelm, Pat and Alan Fowler right here in Bellows Falls. Oh, the excellent Catherine Fisher, Ms. Laurie LaRue. Always great to see you here from Laurie LaRue. Ms. Martha Rowley, Ms. Terry Hudson, and out there in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, out there in Pittsburgh where they're not in the Super Bowl, out there in Pittsburgh where there's a wee dog named Ginger, hoping for one more snack before night falls. Well, I guess night has fallen, but hoping for one more snack before everyone goes to bed. Oh, out there in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, my very, 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 very tall cousin, Mr. Nat Hunter, and his wonderful wife, Elise. Thank you all so much for being here. You take good care, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.